On the eve of the secession crisis in 1860, the United States Army had a total force of just over 16,000 soldiers, which included 6 generals and 1,100 officers. The soldiers in the field were organized into regiments of approximately 1,000 soldiers. Each regiment had 1 colonel to lead, 1 lieutenant colonel to act as deputy and vice commander, 2 majors to divide the regiment into battalions, and 10 captains, each would lead his own company, assisted by 1 first and second lieutenant. Of the 19 regiments in the Army, 4 regiments were artillery units. They were primarily assigned along the coastline, with a small number of artillery companies and batteries deployed to the interior of the country. It should be noted that an artillery company is broken down into batteries, not platoons. An artillery school of practice was established at Fort Monroe, Virginia in the early 1800s. By 1858, 2 companies from each regiment were assigned there on a rotational basis for instruction and drill. 5 of the regiments were mounted units. The mounted riflemen were just that, riflemen on horseback. They had no sabers or pistols. The dragoons were given that extra equipment, but they were still mounted infantry. The purpose of the horse was to get the soldier from point A to point B, then dismount for fighting. The cavalry regiments were the only units to fight primarily from horseback. They were considered an elite unit. The 1st Cavalry was based in the Department of the West, while the 2nd Cavalry was based in Texas. The 1st Infantry was stationed in both the departments of Texas and the West. The 2nd Infantry was stationed in the Department of the West. The 3rd Infantry was stationed in the Department of Texas. The 4th Infantry was stationed along the West Coast, which included the departments of California and Oregon. The 5th Infantry was stationed in the Department of New Mexico. The 6th Infantry was stationed in the Department of California. The 7th Infantry was stationed in the Department of Utah. The 8th Infantry was stationed in both the departments of Texas and New Mexico. The 9th Infantry was stationed in the Department of Oregon. The 10th Infantry was stationed in the departments of the West, New Mexico, and Utah. It should be noted that not one infantry regiment, battalion, nor company was stationed in the Department of the East. The commanding general of the Army was 75-year-old Brevet Lieutenant General Winfield Scott, the brevet being an honorary rank. His regular rank was that of Major General. Scott was a hero of the War of 1812 and the Mexican-American War. He was promoted to the position of commanding general in 1841. During the secession crisis, Scott wanted to preserve the peace by withdrawing the troops from Fort Sumter, but once shots were fired, he fully supported the war effort. The structure of the Army is that of geographical departments, where one commander has authority and responsibility for all military operations in that area. The first and oldest department is the Department of the East, commanded by Brevet Major General John Wool, with the regular rank of Brigadier General. The Department of Texas was commanded by Brevet Major General David Twiggs. His regular rank was that of Brigadier General. His major military accomplishments include being a division commander under both General Scott and Taylor in the Mexican-American War. Notable personnel serving in the Department of Texas include Major Earl Van Dorn of the 2nd Cavalry. He would become one of the best cavalry commanders on either side of the war. Major George Henry Thomas of the 2nd Cavalry. He would remain loyal to the Union and become one of the highest-ranking Union generals at the end of the war. Major Samuel Heintzelman of the 1st Infantry. He would serve as commander of the 3rd Corps of the Army of the Potomac. The Department of the West included the area west of the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. Commanding the department was Brigadier General William Harney. Harney's major accomplishments include being the most experienced Indian fighter in the Army and a leader of the Dragoons. Notable personnel in the Department of the West include Lieutenant Colonel William J. Hardy. He would serve as a corps commander in the Confederate Army. Captain Nathaniel Leone. He would be the first Union commander to take the field. Unfortunately, he would be killed in action early in the war. Major John Sedgwick. He would serve as commander of the 6th Corps in the Army of the Potomac. The Department of California was led by Brevet Brigadier General Albert Sidney Johnston. His regular rank was that of colonel. Johnston was the only man to serve as a general in the armies of Texas, the United States, and the Confederacy. Notable personnel serving in the Department of California are Captain Winfield Scott Hancock, who had gone to serve as commander of the 2nd Corps in the Army of the Potomac. Joseph Hooker was a colonel in the California militia. His prior Army service included time in the artillery, as well as serving as the Assistant Adjutant General of the now defunct Department of the Pacific. The Department of New Mexico was led by Colonel Thomas Fauntleroy. His career consisted of service in the Dragoons. Notable personnel serving in the Department of New Mexico are Major James Longstreet, who was the paymaster for that department. Longstreet would go on to serve as a lieutenant general and corps commander in the Confederate Army. Colonel William Loring would serve as a division commander under both Stonewall Jackson and John Pemberton. Lieutenant Colonel George B. Crichton would briefly serve as a division commander in the Confederate Army. However, before the Battle of Shiloh, he was arrested for drunkenness. Rather than face a court-martial, he resigned from the Army. The Department of Oregon was commanded by Colonel George Wright. Up to this point, Wright's career consisted of multiple battles with the Native Americans, as well as combat in the Mexican-American War. Notable personnel serving in the Department of Oregon were Captain George Pickett, who had served as a division commander in the Army of Northern Virginia. Lieutenant Colonel Silas Casey. He would command a division under the corps of Erasmus D. Keyes. He would also write the System of Infantry Tactics, which was used by both sides of the war. The Department of Utah was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Charles Ferguson Smith. Along with Albert Sidney Johnston, Robert E. Lee, and Joseph Johnston, these four men were considered the best officers in the pre-war Army. Notable personnel serving in the Department of Utah were Colonel Philip St. George Cook, who had gone to serve as a cavalry commander in the Army of the Potomac. Cook was the father-in-law of Jeb Stuart, who outperformed him in the field. Captain John Buford, he would go on to serve as a cavalry and division commander in the Army of the Potomac. After the election of Abraham Lincoln, the Lower South seceded from the Union and formed the Confederate States of America. This caused a chain of events that caused the Army to be restructured for war. In February of 1861, President Buchanan dismissed Major General Twiggs from the Army for treason. The treason was that he handed over the Department of Texas to the Texans in the Confederacy. With the dismissal of Twiggs from the Army, there became a vacant position for the rank of Brigadier General. On March 12th, President Lincoln promoted Colonel Edwin V. Sumner of the 1st Cavalry to the rank of Brigadier General, and sent him to replace General Johnston as commander of the Department of California. Johnston was offered the rank of Major General in the No. 2 position in the rank structure to remain with the Union. Johnston declined the offer, resigned his position in the Army, and left for the Confederacy. On April 12th, Confederate General Beauregard attacked Fort Sumter, which was commanded by Major Robert Anderson. Around this time, the Missouri Guard is planning on attacking the arsenal at St. Louis. General Harney is more concerned with keeping the peace than the potential for hostilities. He is replaced by Captain Nathaniel Leone. After Fort Sumter, Charles Ferguson Smith is passing through the capital. He is on his way to Pennsylvania to recruit a regiment. General Scott redirects him to prepare the defenses of the capital. Smith, being no friend to reporters, he will not grant interviews or supply them with information. In return, the reporters start rumors about Smith being drunk and neglecting duty. He is replaced by Colonel Joseph Mansfield. On May 14th, Major Irvin McDowell, an artilleryman by trade, who had served the past 13 years as a staff officer, was promoted to Brigadier General and given command of the army that would squash the rebellion. The creation of this new army is what caused the rest of the southern states to join the Confederacy. On July 21st, General Beauregard defeats General McDowell at the Battle of First Manassas. Now that the rebellion had not been stopped, there were two priorities for the War Department. The first is to rebuild a permanent regular army, and the second would be to build a volunteer army to fight the war. Here's a list of the generals of the rebuilt army by rank. Lieutenant General Scott would continue to serve as commanding general. Major General George B. McClellan would command the Army of the Potomac. Major General John Fremont would command the Department of the West. Brevet Major General John Wool would continue to command the Department of the East. Brigadier General Edwin V. Sumner would stay in California. Brigadier General Joseph Mansfield would command the defense of the capital. Brigadier General Irvin McDowell would command a corps in the Army of the Potomac. Brigadier General Robert Anderson would command the Department of Ohio. Brigadier General William Rosecrans would command a force in West Virginia. The Volunteer Army is what we would call in modern times a wartime army. Once the regular army was rebuilt, the president began appointing generals to the Volunteer Army. These new generals could be Army veterans, politicians, or someone that built their own command. It should be noted that regular Army rank is of higher rank than Volunteer Army rank. I would like to invite you to join me in this series as I tell the stories of the men who would remain loyal to the Union and serve in its Army.